Thank you very much. My name is Garrett McDonald with Maritime Resources. Happy to give you and everybody a little update today on all of our progress over the last few months and plans for this year and into next year. Just on this first slide here, just to highlight some of the new mineralization we've been seeing in Newfoundland. This is from the Orion North project. We'll talk about this in a second, but just so you know, visible gold is not something we see too often on our project, but we're starting to see more of it here. Let's get into it now a little bit. Some cautionary statements. Please read that when you have time. We've been very busy at Maritime in the last few months. We can kind of rhyme off on a few major things that we've been working on. We drilled over 25,000 meters of exploration drilling last year. This is all being fed into a new resource update that we're working on currently. This is part of our feasibility study, parts of which are already off and running this year. We are also in the project permitting phase for Hammerdown, which is our main gold project in Newfoundland and Labrador. We announced a letter of intent to acquire the Nugget Gold Circuit, which is an idle gold circuit in the BAIE area. Some other non-core assets from Rambler Metals and Mining that was announced late last year. So we're working on closing that at the moment. And also we just announced a new financing last week, which I'll tell you about in a second. So we'll just go back on Hammerdown for a second. Our main project is just near the town of Springdale in Kings Point, Newfoundland and Labrador. We ended up doing a new PEA study on the project last year and came up with a very good result. Starter project for us that looked at around 70,000 ounces per year for the first 5 years of production, with a capital cost of around 57 million Canadian. And that gives us a very healthy economic result. As you can see here at $1,500 gold, we were looking at just over $150 million project with a 65% after-tax rate of return. So very good result. We've then, like I said, spent a lot of time doing some infill drilling last year. This is feeding into the new resource model that we're working on now. The feasibility study, the project permitting, both of those are targeting late 2021 for completion. And now we've announced the deal with Rambler for the plant. So it's all starting to come together. We're picking up a lot of momentum recently. And also recently have had quite a bit of success with the exploration program. So although the bulk of the program last year was focused on infill, the last parts of our exploration drilling last year have returned some results back. In fact, new discoveries on all of our projects around the area. So our main one, Hammerdown, as an example, we hit a new zone inside the open pit shell at Hammerdown, 92 meters of 1.4 grams. So that's something that's brand new for us, and hopefully that helps bring the strip ratio down a little bit at Hammerdown. About 2 kilometers to the south is the Orion project. We intersected a new zone there that I'll tell you a little bit more about here shortly. Thicker zone, 13 meters, grading nearly 5 grams. So very interesting, open in all directions. And then at our Whisker Valley project, which is a few kilometers away from Hammerdown and Orion, brand new discovery. Total greenfield project here at Whisker Valley, brand new, but also some new mineralization showing up that looks a lot like Hammerdown, but with a little more copper content, as you'll see. So for 2021, we've got a drill budget of 17,000 meters, about 12,000 of that planned at Hammerdown. In Orion, another 5,000 at Whisker Valley. And our target, what we're trying to do is grow the roughly 1 million ounce resource that we have now to 2 million to support a production plan of 100,000 ounces per year. We're backed by some well-known groups, Dundee Goodman Merchant Partners, our largest shareholder, at about 19.9%. Sprott, 1832 Asset Management, and Crescat Capital. In corporate structure, we do have one analyst covering the stock, George Topping at Industrial Alliance with a 30-cent target. Currently sitting with about 5 million in working capital and a market cap of about $40 million. As I mentioned too, there was an announcement last week of a new financing that we're looking at. We announced a $10 million financing consisting of 6 million flow-through and a private placement from Tembo Capital for 4 million. So that would put Maritime in a very good financial position to execute on all of our exploration work for the year and all of our feasibility and permitting efforts as well. On the team, lots of people here you probably have heard of and recognize. We've built this team up over the last couple of years at Maritime. Happy to say that 50% of our management team and board of directors are original Newfoundland and Labradorians. So we've got some people in Newfoundland that take care of all of our exploration and permitting work, small team in Toronto on the finance and accounting, investor relations. We do have a very well experienced board with John Hayes, Mark Ashcroft, who you've heard from today from Aurelius, myself and Peter Mercer from Rambler Metals and Mining. Okay, Newfoundland and Labrador. So let's talk about where we're located. We're up in the northern part, just near the town of Springdale, just on the southern end of the BAIE VERTE mining district. It's a very easy place to get to. Infrastructure is fantastic. We'll look a little closer. We own quite a bit of land in the area, 350 square kilometers. We've got our two main projects here. This is Hammerdown and Orion, just shown here on the map. Whisker Valley is our other project that we'll talk about in a second, just a little bit to the west. And we're very close to two communities, Springdale and Kings Point. We're also very close to the Trans-Canada Highway and also the highway that goes up to the BAIE VERTE mining district up in here, where Anaconda and Rambler are both operating their mines. So it's a great area to work in. We've got the roads, the power, skilled laborers available, services, everything that you would need to support an aggressive exploration program as well as a mine development project. Okay, speaking of mine development projects, let's talk about Hammerdown. So this is a view of the site. This was a former high-grade operating mine back in the early 2000s. A company called Richmond was here, and they ran this project during very low gold prices in the $300 to $400 per ounce range, with a very high-grade cutoff, about 8 to 9 grams per ton. So we're dealing with what's left behind, roughly 1 million ounces at the moment. We're continuing to explore to grow that resource. And we're really interested in getting this mine started up again to generate cash flow to allow us to grow the company from there. We will look at processing the ore off-site, very similar to what Richmond did at the Nugget Pond Gold Circuit. On this slide here is a representation or a bit of a rendering on what the Hammerdown mine plan looks like. So this is taken from our PEA study that was completed last year. And you can see here we've got two deposits. What you're looking at here are diluted tons and grades for each. So you'd have the Orion deposit to the south, Hammerdown here to the north. Both of these would run concurrently, feeding a central crushing and ore sorting plant here. This would be a dry process, no water being used in the sorting plant. And really it's X-rays that sort mineralized material from the waste rock. And what we'd have here is 1,400 tons a day coming into the plant. We would reject about half of that as waste. That would go back into the mine as backfill for long-term closure. And the product of 700 tons a day would get hauled up to the Nugget Pond plant for final processing. So we're very close to the main highway, and the main transmission line here is less than a kilometer away. And this is a brownfield site. This is, this mine was permitted once before. So all of these roads are in place. There are no legacy issues. It was closed by Richmond in a good way. And even our geochemistry work on this waste dump here and all of the waste rock that we've tested has been non-acid generating, which is a big plus for long-term closure. A little more on the sorting plant. We've done quite a few programs. We're doing another one now to test the ore sorting response to the mineralization from Hammerdown and Orion. But on the programs that we did to support the PEA study, like I said, about 50% of the mass could be rejected as low grade. And we were recovering about 95% of the gold in the product that we keep. So half of the mass can be rejected, half can be sent up to the mill. That is a very big benefit for trucks on the road, for greenhouse gas emissions, and it allows us to process the higher grade material and not spend a lot of money on trucking and processing of material that doesn't pay us anything. So we'd have two sorters in series, and this would feed a product storage facility here, and the rejects would just get backhauled into the mine. So very interesting idea, whereas it's starting to become more adopted at gold projects and even copper projects around the world. More test work that we're doing now to support the feasibility design, but so far so good. It looks like a great idea for our project. Once the ore is sorted, it's trucked up to the Nugget Pond Gold Circuit. Like I mentioned, we are in the process of closing a deal with Rambler Metals and Mining on the existing gold plant. And then we would want to look at designing a crushing and grinding circuit here that would allow the gold plant and Rambler's current copper operations to run concurrently and without interfering with each other. That's really important. Best part about it is there's a permitted tailings facility here at site, and both companies will look to use that together. So this is the same plant that processed ore from Hammerdown once before when Richmond was operating. So there's already a history of tailings being placed here from Hammerdown. And it's roughly 140 kilometers away. So it's a fairly long haul, which is why we want to look at the ore sorting to minimize the amount of truck traffic that takes the ore to the mill. Quick snapshot here from our PEA study. So as I mentioned, a capital cost of about $57 million, low capital intensity compared to other North American developers at $83 per ounce. Off-site processing in Nugget Pond. This study really looked at about 500,000 ounces recovered over the life of mine. The first few years are fairly high grade, so we do get the benefit of nearly 9 grams per ton through the plant, giving us that 70,000 ounce per year production profile. And you can see the sensitivity at some different gold prices here. So it's very sensitive to gold price, not so sensitive to capital. But if we're up in that north of $1,500 per ounce, it's a very attractive project. So on the project milestones from here on in, we are tracking along this schedule for 2021. Like I said, currently working on the resource update from all of the infill drilling that was completed last year, finalizing our technical programs. We're in the permitting mode now for Hammerdown, so we're expecting to submit our EPR application documents into the province here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So if everything goes well, we'd be looking at being fully permitted later this year. Feasibility study as well is kicked off. Parts of it are already underway. The resource update is certainly the key part of that, which we're working on now. And again, that would likely come in at the end of this year as well. So later in the year, we'll be looking at all of that together as two key pieces of information: the permitting, feasibility study, so that we can make a broad, production decision for the project, arrange the financing to build it, and then look to get this mine up and running in 2022. Okay. I'll talk a little bit now about exploration. First of all, at Hammerdown and Orion, and we really look at that as the Hammerdown Gold Project. They're very close to each other, separated by about 2 kilometers. And I just wanted to touch on this. This is a slide looking kind of northwest at Hammerdown up here to the north, Orion to the south. And these are some of our recent exploration highlights, I suppose, from the last couple of months. We've got quite a good section here throughout Orion, even between the Orion and Hammerdown deposits. This is an area that's been really, poorly explored over the years. It's kind of a wet area. So we're going to test that this year. Even at Hammerdown, you can see that we've added, quite a bit of new mineralization showing up in the southern end of the open pit, 92 meters at 1.4, 31 meters at 2.9 grams. These are all new holes that will be added into the resource. To the right or to the northeast of Hammerdown, we had a new discovery about 150 meters away from the deposit, 6.9 grams over 6 meters. That's a brand new area here that we're going to follow up on. And then even at the Orion deposit, we've started to see new things showing up here too. So Orion's been a deposit, in this project for a while. It was never mined. Only Hammerdown was mined here. But we are seeing a lot more interesting things showing up at Orion just with our latest drill program. Here we have 26 grams over 4 meters, 5.2 grams over 13, and then a new hit here 300 meters away from Orion, 22 grams over 0.4. So this is about a 4 kilometer long mineralized corridor with a 1 million ounce resource and wide open for new discoveries and hopefully additions to the resource. We just completed on this image here shows us a VTEM survey, which we just completed in the last couple of weeks. This was really interesting for us to see as a group for the first time, noticing some very interesting anomalies here between Orion and Hammerdown. So Hammerdown itself shows up. I think it's probably because of the sheer amount of pyrite that we have in the deposit. We have these narrow veins. We have over 60 different wireframes inside here. So it's a collection of high-grade veins close together. But we are seeing a couple of brand new anomalies to the north of Hammerdown and then to the north of Orion. This whole area really has not been explored well. So these are two key targets for us to go after, which we are doing right now. We do have one drill on site at Orion. We're adding a second drill here in the next probably 2 weeks. And these drills will be targeting these areas this winter. So let's look at Orion just a little bit more. So this is a plan map here showing the Orion deposit. And if you remember, this was that big VTEM anomaly just to the north of Orion. We're going to look at this one section right here because this is a pretty interesting one for us. It's pretty exciting that we found a new zone within Orion, or maybe it's just expanding on what we already know at Orion through additional sampling, picking up some mineralization that maybe hasn't been seen before, or at least not fully modeled. But as you can see here, we've been able to trace this new zone from surface down to at least 150 meters, and it's wide open at depth. It is wide open along strike as well. And some very nice and continuous mineralization over decent widths, 4.8 over 13.6 meters, 5.2 over 13, 2.2 over 21. These are nice widths, good grades. Potentially most of this might be underground, but it's early days yet. We're going to have a look. We have one drill here right now. We'll continue to follow and step out along this zone throughout the winter. Here's a view of what that core looks like, 4.8 grams over 13.6. I guess the thing to show here, traditionally at Hammerdown and even at Orion, we've seen narrow quartz veins with pyrite. That's where the gold is. This is a little different. We're seeing thick zones of continuous, more felsic-looking mineralization. So there's pyrite in here, but it's a little bit different. So this is really where I think we can start to add ounces quickly, if we can follow this zone at depth and along strike. I should also mention our Greenfield project, Whisker Valley. This is a sample taken just last summer, 75 grams per ton. This project is located just a few kilometers away from Hammerdown and Orion, just on the other side of the Green Bay Fault. A brand new project for us. We're just starting to understand it. Early days yet, but we're seeing mineralization like this on either side of about 1.5 kilometer wide valley. And these are all from bedrock samples that we trenched last year. And you can see a really nice section here of different samples of gold, silver, and even some copper showing up, which makes it a little bit different than Hammerdown. We don't see copper too often at Hammerdown. There's a picture here looking east at Whisker Valley. So last summer we started to see, we knew we had some trenches exposed here on the west side, some really nice outcrops, and following the veins along the surface here. We then opened up some veins in outcrop again on the east side of the valley. This is the gold pit, 37 grams and 1.3% copper. We also started to see some big float samples inside the middle of the valley, 75 grams per ton here. So we've been drilling some holes. This is one example, WH-20-12. At 150 meters below the surface, we hit a nice zone, 5 grams over 5.8 meters. So there's a few other holes we're still waiting on assays for, but potentially and hopefully that we have these zones all connected across this valley. So that could potentially turn into a new zone for us. Okay. I think we'll wrap it up. It's a pretty short and sweet presentation, but look, Maritime is, a well-financed Canadian developer and explorer. We've got a good treasury. We've got good backers with the shareholders that we have. We're really well financed here with this closing of this recently announced financing. We have a very strong and attractive high-grade development project on the books here with the 70,000 ounce per year production profile. And the exploration discoveries all announced last year at all of our projects. So I think if we combine everything together, that helps us get to that 2 million ounce target eventually and 100,000 ounce a year production company. best of all, we're a jurisdiction to work in, as people have said throughout the conference here, and very happy to work in this province. It's a great place.
Thanks, Garrett. That was great, and congratulations on the financing. I know you announced that last week. I think you mentioned it'll take you until the end of this year.
Yeah, that's correct, for sure. Yeah.
And there's a question from the audience, I guess, about future financing plans. Was it too early to make a call there, or do you have a sense of what your plan will look like going forward?
Yeah, what we're planning to do is, the financing that we're just announced, combined with what we have, certainly gets us to that project financing point later this year. So we're well financed from here to there.
Okay, great. And in terms of the resource update, how many meters would you expect to be included in that resource, and which zones? Like you talked about a lot of new discoveries and newer drill results, I guess, from some of these zones. So maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so we drilled 25,000 meters last year. I would say that at least 20 of that will be going into the new resource. We spent a lot of time at the Hammerdown and Orion deposits working on the infill drilling, just to increase our confidence and convert inferred over to M&I ounces. So I'd say that's the answer. And from here on, it's really for us about stepping out from the known deposits that we have to try and add to them.
Then you mentioned finding some base metals as well. Is that something that you think you'll see more of, or is that more of an anomalous event?
I think we'll see more of that showing up. At Whisker Valley for sure, there's certainly a lot of copper that we see there, also lead and zinc. Even at Hammerdown, as an example, on the one just in the northeast part of Hammerdown, we have a historic deposit called Lochinvar, which is zinc rich. So I think we had an interval there recently of 44% zinc equivalent over 2.5 meters.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of everything going on there. Gold's our focus. For sure, if we find some high-grade copper, that'd be very interesting too.
That's great. And we had a question from the audience about taxes. From what they gather, there's a 15% corporate tax, 15% to Newfoundland, and a 15% mining tax. So assuming you get into production and are profitable, what tax rate would you be expecting to pay?
Yeah, I think in our PEA study it was around 41% is what we assumed, if I remember right. It's I think that's what we based it on, so around there.
And then you talked about optimization as you move into PFS as well. Can you just provide a summary of the main inputs, I think, that you would feel would impact the PFS the most compared to PEA?
Yeah, so it's actually the fee study that we're working on. We'll go directly to the fee study from the last PEA study that we did. Optimizing from here on, I think, the mine plan, first of all, is the main one. As you can see from our project, grade really drives the economics. So we do want to optimize the high margin material in the early years. So that'll be one thing we'll look at right away with the new resource. And I think the second one will be capital costs. Once we close the transaction with Rambler, we'll have a close look at the Nugget Gold Circuit, closer than we've already looked. And we've been looking at it for quite a while. And I think that's just the key thing to look at, any capital cost creep that we want to try to cut off early and anticipate, so we can plan for that in the feasibility study.
Okay, great. Yeah. There's a question or a comment, I guess, from the audience as well about Crescat's involvement. I know they've been involved in a few other names that we're familiar with. Can you talk about when they got involved and how long they've been involved and their support for the company?
Yep, I think they were involved in the last financing we did back in August of 2020, September. Yeah, so we've been talking to them quite regularly, and yeah, they've been around for a few months now. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions that we have. I appreciate you being here, and thanks for the presentation. Looking forward to seeing some more drill results and getting the fees and resource out.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. Great to be here.